Welcome to the Jon Harrison Podcast. Statistics show us that about 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Obviously, that affects bottom lines of companies, individual, their own engagement at work, but also affects families and communities. We don't want to just be frustrated about things that are going on in the workplace or in the world. We want to do something about it. So we're going to talk about this while others aren't, and we hope you will join us on this journey.
Welcome back to the Jon Harrison Podcast. This is Madeline Baker, and we have a very special episode for you guys today. I have Melissa Dunn from our team here, and then I have two very special guests who have been big ambassadors of the VIP way. We have Christy Loggins with Central Arkansas Water, and then we also have Robbie Robinson with the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. And Robbie is also calling in, so his audio may sound a little different, so bear with us with that. But we are just so excited to have them here with us. You know, we were kind of talking, Melissa and I, before Christy got here and Robbie, that y'all do everything holistically. You see the VIP way and you see all the parts of it, and I think that can be very challenging because we have a lot of clients that just want to pick and choose little pieces, and then they wonder why things aren't working. And of course, culture change takes time. Like, we're not saying like, yeah, just do all these things real quick and like it'll everyone's going to be happy and it'll be positive. But yeah, we just love that they're all kind of doing this holistically. So yeah, we're excited to have them here with us today. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, but I did want to just say we're going to be talking specifically a little bit about how to have respectful conversations and specifically like considering opposing viewpoints. That means just speaking with someone that has a different view of something than you and how difficult that can be. I think we've all had that experience. But let's start with Christy here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, just a background, personally and professionally, if you'd like?
Okay, so I'm Christy Loggins, as Madeline said. I've been with Central Arkansas Water for about 5 years now. When I got there, we were in year 2 of working with Jon Harrison and the VIP2. So I've just been excited to kind of get involved and be involved with the training. I'm over training at CAW. So to be able to kind of see it for a couple of years and to come into a utility that really felt like, hey, we want to make sure our culture is positive. Yeah. And we're not just going to say that or put pictures on the wall, but we're really going to invest in our people. So anytime I'm like, hey, we've got high VIP training to new employees, the first thing is, what is that? So It's okay. It's how we do our culture. It's how we talk to people. It's how we make sure we play together as a team. But it's also how we make sure that you develop even when you leave CAW. We want you to be happy here, but we also want you to be good for your families. And I get the privilege of sitting in and watching them see it for the first time and kind of the light bulb come on, and they'll come back and say, wow, I've never worked at a place where people actually invested in their customers. So we're really excited to be a part of this team. I'm not from the Little Rock area. I grew up in Camden, Arkansas, about 12,000 people. I'm the youngest of 3, and I've been in Little Rock now for over 20 years. I've got 2 kids, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. So not only have I dealt with conflict and respectful conversations at work, but then I get to go home and do it as well with those teenagers. So I'm really excited to get into this topic today.
Hey, Christy, one thing that you mentioned a couple of times was the high VIP training. Can you elaborate just a little bit on what that is as compared to the VIP way training?
Yeah, we kind of took the VIP and customized it. So we added high performing and innovative, and of course, values driven, informed, and passionate. We kept from you guys, but we wanted to just put our own water spin on it.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's great. And we love it when our clients do that because we really want them to make it their own. So yeah, thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, that's great. Robbie, you want to go next?
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robbie Robinson. I am the Deputy Executive Officer at the National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences. We are one of the 27 institutes of the National Institutes of Health. I'm coming to you today from Durham, North Carolina. I've been with NIEHS now for almost 2 years. It's been a really, really great experience. I've enjoyed my time here. Prior to joining the NIEHS family, I worked in Little Rock with the Food and Drug Administration. So that's how I came to know John and got familiar and accustomed with the VIP way. So since I've been here over the past year, we've really, really embraced the VIP way at NIEHS. We've had several super leadership trainings. We've had several employee sessions, and we really just wanted to make sure that we have a positive and healthy work environment. That's a big passion of mine. As John often says, we spend pretty much half of our waking hours at work. And so why not make your work environment the best it can be, whether you're working in an office or whether you're working remotely. The goal is always to make for a positive work environment. And for me specifically, I always want whatever organization I'm a part of to be an employer of choice. And so that's kind of what really drives me, and that's why I'm really excited to talk to you today about some of these hard topics. Having respectful conversations, hard, they're challenging. Considering opposing views is always important whenever you have diverse teams and have a diverse workforce. You're going to have conflict, you're going to have opposing viewpoints. And so I'm happy to share some things that I've learned along the way, and hopefully it can help provide some insights and some guidance for others as well.
That's really good, Robbie. Thanks for sharing. I've heard from both of you guys, talking a little bit about the home life and how like it just transfers over. And I think that's the big driving force behind us. And it's just so special. I feel really grateful getting to know John and work for him in the VIP way, because it does, whenever you're happy at work, or at least positive, you may not be happy all the time, but you have a good experience. It just transfers over and you come back, your home life, and you're just, it's so much better. Yeah. Okay. So let's jump into, we've got a few questions here, and I want to just hear some experience from both of you guys on maybe, have you experienced a time where you did have a conversation with someone that had an opposing view, and what kind of steps did you take to navigate that situation? Who wants to go first?
I don't mind starting.
Go for it, Robbie.
Sure. So, I've always supervised a team of administrative professionals who have a variety of different jobs, everything from HR to budget to logistics. But kind of the common theme has always been customer service. So early on in my supervisory career, actually, when I first came to Arkansas, I took over a team that was really struggling. It was a great team. But unfortunately, the feedback that I received when I walked in the door from customers was that they really weren't getting the service that they needed. So having kind of done some listening for the first, 30 to 90 days I was on the job, I decided to change up our customer service model so that we could provide a different customer service approach for our customers. I also wanted to make sure that we had an administrative team that was productive and positive and could really kind of develop those productive and positive relationships with our customers. So I had this new approach. I was ready to roll it out. I shared it at a staff meeting, and one of my employees, who actually happened to be a lion, very strong lion, did not agree with the approach. They did not take my wonderful plan very well. They were very vocal about it, and they were actually pretty rude and disrespectful as they were voicing their dissent. So, just to give you a bit of background, this particular employee had opposed a couple of other initiatives that I had brought up in the past. So, that's just a bit of background on that situation. So, going back to the staff meeting when I rolled out this new plan, and I got that very kind of vocal and very rude and disrespectful dissent or opposing view from one of my colleagues, I was pretty upset. I was pretty hot. It's not fun being what at the time I felt like being undermined in front of the team. And I also felt, in addition to this particular employee used the public staff meeting as a way to garner support for their opposition. So as far as how I handled the situation, there are a couple of things I did, I think, pretty well looking back on it, and there are a few things I wish I would have done differently. So as a golden retriever, and I'm sure Madeline and Leslie can relate to this, I was cool, calm, and collected, wanted to make sure that there was harmony. So I did a lot of active listening. I made sure that I understood their perspective and where they were coming from. All along the inside, I was still pretty upset. But I continued throughout the course of their dissent, just being respectful, making sure that I gave voice to their perspective, really tried to understand where they were coming from and some of the issues and concerns that they had with this proposed plan. And really focused, at the end of the day, we're all here for the same thing. We wanted to provide the best customer service possible. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway I have from that whole experience is a lot of times, when you're hearing voices of opposition or folks who may not be on board with an initiative or a project that you're trying to spearhead or lead, it's definitely important to be respectful and, really fall back on a lot of the leadership expectations that we learned from the VIP leadership training. So valuing diverse people or perspectives, communicating with excellence, these are all really things that really kind of come into play when you're in those types of situations. So that's just one example that really came to mind when you asked that question.
Yeah, that's really good, Robbie. I feel like that's very important to be respectful in that scenario. And I like that you talked about you asked questions and kind of tried to peel back the onion on why they thought that way. I don't think I do a very good job of that, honestly. At least haven't in the past. I haven't been faced with this as often, but I definitely feel like I have had times in the past where I haven't done that. I've just kind of like, maybe if I'm disagreeing with something my boss is doing or someone that just has a stronger personality than me, I kind of cower. And just to be honest, I look back on those and I'm like, yeah, I didn't really ask anything or say anything. I just kind of like walked away and was a little upset and was like, okay, got to get over it because it's just not going to be my way. And yeah, I can definitely see where I can expand and do better next time by asking those questions and just trying to be respectful.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard. Easier said than done, especially in the heat of the moment like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned, Robbie, that I heard you say through the kind of the process that you worked through was exercising the active listening and making sure that you were hearing some of the things that were, bringing some, I guess, angst or concern on the other person's behalf. And you tried to represent those in such a way that they were included in some of the changes that you were making for customer service. So, you mentioned at the beginning, Madeline, you're not always happy at work, but it's a positive work environment, right? Yeah. It doesn't always mean that you're going to agree, but having that mutual respect with one another and enough respect so that you can listen and take into consideration all of the things that are being thrown at you, especially in the midst of change. I think that in some ways instantaneously builds respect with people and relationships, even though you may not use it 100%. That's really good. Christy, do you have an experience where you've had to deal with this?
Absolutely. So being part of the HR department under training and development, we have the task of updating people on policy changes. And there are certain topics you really don't want to get into at work. You don't want to talk politics. You really don't want to get into religion. Well, this particular day, we had to talk about our ethics policy. And in that ethics policy, there's a paragraph where we got into personal pronouns. And this is a very touchy subject for some people for a variety of reasons. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it in a small setting. It was about 75 people in the room. So you had people that were excited to talk about personal pronouns and felt like they were being seen and they were being heard, and this was a conversation that we needed to have. You had other people who were the polar opposite, and I don't understand. What's the problem? What are we talking about? How I identify? So I'm standing in this room and I'm trying to have this conversation that I know walking into is not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. So we started off with some what I call softball policies, some easier things to get everybody kind of on the same page, right? Yeah. So once we got there, kind of take a deep breath and we started talking, and I could see the people who were on my side and they were nodding, and I could see the people who were already closed off, arms folded, just staring at me. So then we got to a place where there were some questions and, well, what if this person does this or what if they do that? And I said, well, keep in mind, you always have the option to just call that person by their name. You can always refer to them as their name and just, try to stay very calm, kept my voice just like that. Well, what if they decide they want to identify as a giraffe? And of course, the crowd starts to, everybody's laughing. And I said, okay. I said, will that impact the way they do their job? Will that impact the team that you guys have built? I said, if it does not stop the way they do their job, the impact of the team, and if they're being respectful to you, can we at some point at least show them that same respect in the workplace, or again, just call them by their first name? Yes. So I'm not going to say that we all sung Kumbaya at the end, because you had people who were very dug into, this is not something we're going to do. But at the same time, we had to get the message out there, and we had to talk about, okay, here are the consequences of if someone feels that they're being violated because you're not calling them by their personal pronoun or what they want to be called by, and you also are not calling them by their first name. So we had the conversation of, is this really a discussion you want to bring to HR? Or can we just simply, agree to disagree? Because you're not going to always agree with what's being said or what has to happen. But if you look past the issue and see the person, and I can say, you know what, I don't want to hurt Melissa's feelings, so I'm just going to call her Melissa whenever I talk to her, and we're both happy with that, and we've got a medium ground, then we're still good. But when you work in an environment with diverse people, with different backgrounds, you can't just dig your heels in the sand without there being consequences. So after that, I had several people come up to me, thank you, this is a conversation that really needed to happen. And I had other people that were like, why do we have to talk about this? But we all agreed on that day that as a team, if nothing else, we'll just use first names and we'll throw out pronouns altogether. And, that got a little bit of a joke, broke the ice just a little bit, but you're going to have difficult conversations, and you're going to have people that support you 100%, and you're going to have those same people that are in opposition at 100%. And yes, we try to avoid some of those conversations but in this instance, we had an incident and it just had to happen. At the end of the day, that was maybe 3 months ago. We hadn't had any issues in HR. Nobody's reported that they felt disrespected or people aren't using their pronouns. But I think, too, we had to give them the opportunity to get it out, to kind of voice where they are, to feel like they were being heard, and then come up with a solution in the room of both sides are at least willing to do this. I'm willing to call you by your first name, and you're willing to accept that I'm not being disrespectful because I'm not using the pronoun of your choice. So,
yeah. Wow, that's great. Yeah, what is it that we say in our training? I'm probably going to get this backwards. I usually do whenever I try to say it verbatim. But, if two people that are on very opposing sides like that, if you can work hard to not be offended, but then the other side work hard not to offend intentionally, that's really where the common ground comes in. And using someone's name in that example was the common ground, but also agreeing that that was not offensive in any way to either side of that conversation. Right. So, no, that was a great example. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, we always say the golden rule: treat people how they want to be treated, but treat people the way you want to be treated.
That's the golden rule.
But then the platinum rule:
yes,
treat people how they want to be treated. And I think that's the piece that we miss sometimes. I just assume that you want to be treated the exact same way that I want to be treated, instead of taking the time to get to know you and understand what that expectation is.
I've never heard that before. Yeah. I like that one.
Yeah.
It takes it an extra step there.
Yes. Yeah. I haven't heard that in a while, so thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, that is something that I think as HR comrades here, we kind of live by in some ways, because a lot of people think
I was going to say, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I hadn't heard that in a while either, but it's so true. I think it goes to, how we communicate with one another and all types of, workplace issues. And even issues that I see outside of the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very similar to the misconception sometimes that equality and equity are the same thing, and they are absolutely not the same thing. So anyway, thank you for saying that. I do have just like a quick example that I was thinking of as I was listening to Robbie and Christy talk, but I was relatively new at the electric co-ops and was looking at changing some of the recruiting processes there relative to like panel interviews versus one-on-one interviews. And there were several leaders from time to time that would want to just skip the interviewing process altogether, and they had one applicant that they were most interested in and wanted to bring them in for an interview, but not really consider others. So I was stepping through the minefield of changing that mindset. And I had a leader that came to me at least 3 separate times who was a retired Marine commander. And I think on finally the 3rd time, he was coming to me saying, I want to interview this person and make an offer. And I'm like, I'm happy to, bring them in for an interview, but we need to look at all of these other applicants too that meet the minimum qualifications. And so, like I said, it was about the 3rd conversation I'd had with this individual, and I was trying to listen understandingly, but it just, it wasn't quite sinking in. And that kind of that banter back and forth with the way I've always done it versus how it's changing really got to this individual. And there's just no other way to say it. They stood up out of their chair, stood over me, lost their cool, and was like yelling at me as if I were a Marine. And so I was sitting in my chair and I never moved. I never changed my facial expression. I didn't stand up to meet the individual. I let them finish what they were saying. And then at that point, I said, I hear what you're saying, and I understand that you are so passionate about it, but this type of behavior and response is not going to get us to where we need to be. So I said, my recommendation is that we wrap this up today, and then we come back together tomorrow and try to finish this conversation. So, trying to navigate those situations can be really difficult. And, golden retrievers are non-conflict in nature anyway, but I think it also is beneficial because we don't pop off the handle in those emotional responses. So in trying to navigate that and keep your cool, I think, reflecting back to some of the core basics that maybe a lot of us may have learned in childhood or through high school. And again, I kind of go back to some of our curriculum around the 7 characteristics of a star employee, and just maintaining that civility and keeping a mindset of we're in this for the same reason. We all have passions. We all want to get these people hired, but we need to do it in a respectful way, in a more calm way. So if you can kind of go back to some of those basics that you learned and keep them at the forefront of the conversation, then you have less emotional responses at that point.
Yeah. So. Well, that kind of feeds right into this next question about, a scenario like if you were in this opposing view conversation, and let's say somebody is getting really heated and really upset, and how would you deal with that? Melissa, you kind of said step away. Would you say that's always the best course to take whenever, you're getting heated, but you need to come to a resolution? Can you give any advice, I guess, if you're in that scenario?
Stepping away is always good, but if you can't, the main thing is remaining calm, because the only person you can control at this point is you. And escalating to their level, nobody's going to be hurt. So a lot of times what I'll do is, as they're yelling, my voice will get lower and softer, because at some point they're going to have to stop yelling in order to hear what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. So in doing that, it may be frustrating for them, but they're going to have to stop talking sooner or later. And then there are other times where I'll just sit back and just kind of look at them and give them time to get it out. Okay, and then it's like, okay, now what do we need to do next? Yeah. Because what you have on the table, we cannot do. and being honest with people. There's no, we can't do this. But if you're ready to talk, then maybe we can come up with something that we can do once you're ready to let go of this, because this can't happen. Whether it's breaking policy or it's just something people want PTO and there are already too many people scheduled off. Whatever it is, this can't happen. Can we come to a happy medium? Yeah. Are you at a place where we can do that? Because this is what we have to work by. Here are our guidelines. Here's the parameters that we're going to. And the other thing I think is to not take it personal, because they're not yelling at you. And that this is something I'm still learning sometimes. They're frustrated with the situation. And I think what happens is we feel like you're yelling at me. You're coming at me. You're attacking me. Instead of looking at what you're angry with is this particular situation. So I can't take it personal. One of us has to remain out of our emotions in order for us to get something done today.
Yeah, that's great. The only thing I would add is just to encourage anyone who's struggling to remain calm and really kind of keep that open mindset during disagreements, is to really kind of rely on those active listening skills. So things like repeating back your understanding of that person's perspective, I think that goes a long way in not only helping that person feel understood, but if you're that person who is struggling to remain calm, it gives you a chance to pause and kind of really reflect on what they're saying instead of looking just kind of a quick way to respond. Because a lot of times I think you get in these conversations and you can kind of go back and forth and you can just look to respond to whatever it is that other person is saying. But if you take a breath, use some active listening skills to do things like repeat back that person's statement or question, I think that not only helps them feel like they're being heard, but again, like I said, gives you a chance to kind of lower the temperature a little bit, pause and reflect on what they're saying, instead of just looking to quickly respond.
Yeah.
And even asking them, how does this make you feel? How does this change make you feel? And help me understand the connection between your feeling and the change itself. That help me understand phrase is so powerful.
It really is.
Yeah, just one thing I thought of, as the example I gave earlier was an instance early on in my career. But one of the things that I've learned, and it's really kind of came to be true after going through the VIP leadership training, and specifically the knowing your people segment. So one thing I would have done a little bit differently is that, back then when I was rolling out that customer service change, I probably would have previewed that with my beavers on the team and my lions, just to kind of gauge the reaction. Because as we know, beavers and lions, a lot of times, if you're introducing a major change, they're thinking about the impact of that change on other things. And so they may have a much stronger reaction to a new change or a new process than your golden retrievers or your otters. So that's one thing as I reflect back on that experience early on in my career that I would probably do a little bit differently than I have done differently, throughout the course of my career.
That's a really good point. Yeah, knowing your people, so those people, you can ease them into the change and maybe have one-on-ones with them to just let them know before. That's a really great point.
Yeah, and I know we keep referring to different personalities in terms of animals, and if this happens to be the first episode you're listening to with us, we use a personality test or assessment that represents 4 different animals, that of which is a lion, a beaver, an otter, and a golden retriever. And we have a previous episode on that, and maybe Madeline can link that in the description of this one to give you a rundown on what those 4 personality types are like in terms of their strengths and their blind spots and things that fill their water bottles and things that empty their water bottles. But just to connect those dots there for folks, this might be the first time they're listening.
Yes, I'll definitely link to that down below. But thank you both so much for being on this episode. We really appreciate it, and I hope that y'all listening got something out of it, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for joining us today on the Jon Harrison Podcast. As you know, we believe that a positive work culture creates a ripple effect that extends into families and communities. If you found anything of value in today's episode, please share it with somebody so they can hear it as well. And if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please fill out the form below.